Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Tricked Before. This time, second chances. Yeah, second chances. This is your first chance. Maybe it's your last chance. Either way, support us. Patreon.com/IBD. Become a Patreon member. See us on video. See all the extra bonus. It is really bonus content. We see us go off the rails. If you like our banter on here, you're going to love it there. And if you don't like our banter on here, you might like that even better. So become a Patreon member. Patreon.com/IBD. And this is your first chance to hear us talk about Second Chance on It's All Been Trekked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trekked Before. Part of your hosts are here.
This is Steven.
Jimmy-Jerome. We're going to give Keith some second chances. Maybe you'll hear him later in this episode at the end, like we've done several times recently. But he is not present here right now. We're hoping we're going to have him next week. But for now, not here.
It's us.
It's just the two of us. Sorry. If this is your second chance to turn this off and skip it, but like I said, we'll get Keith's thoughts at some point, whether it's later this week or the next one. First impressions and second chances.
I'm going to call it the enemy within light. We talked about this last week a little bit, but I liked that it got into he and Troy and worked into that stuff. Not an awesome episode, but still, for a derivative episode, and at least it went for some emotional and some relationship things. And I don't know, you probably do know, but I don't know that it advanced anything. But still, I thought it was above okay. I didn't love it.
Obviously, you're a Lower Decks viewer and fan, so you know now where the Boimler duplicate came from.
Oh, yes. And
why Riker would have been the captain to understand what happened. So, I mean, obviously a little bit different situation there, but
that might be why I wrote down at the end, isn't there another Riker out there? So I might be thinking about us talking about that.
There is another Riker out there.
Okay.
We will see this other Riker again. Yeah, there is another episode with Tom Riker, but it's not Next Gen. It's Deep Space Nine. Okay. So we'll follow up on him there. There are lots of novels that follow up on him. Oh. And Tom Riker's plot will tie into a major element of Voyager, even though he's not in Voyager.
Okay.
Will Riker, for some reason, is the character that everybody loves so much they put him in every Star Trek spinoff. I mean, he's in Voyager, he's in Enterprise. Yeah. Will Riker keeps coming back, so just because the Next Generation ends, don't expect the end of Will Riker. I mean, obviously, he came back for Star Trek Picard. But
that's true, yeah.
Yeah. Jonathan Frakes is also the go-to Trek director after this era. Mm-hmm. Like, he did several of the Next Gen films, and he directed episodes of all the other Star Trek shows, including Discovery and Picard. And so he's very much a very active member of the Star Trek family, even 30 years after this. Yeah. There's lots of... which means someday we could see Thomas again. I think there's a lot of assumptions based on other things that happen in DS9 and Voyager on what Thomas's ultimate fate was, but since it's not canon, we don't know. He could still be out there somewhere. I will say a lot of the novels and stuff assume that he's dead by this point, but just because of where he is next time we see him. But we don't see him die. I will say, we talked just briefly that I read Imzadi 2, Triangle, the second Imzadi book, and I was complaining a little bit to you that it's got a lot of Worf in it instead of Riker, but it has a lot of Tom Riker in it too. And Sela. Sela, Commander Sela, who we won't see again, I don't think, in Next Gen. So if you want some Tom Riker and basically a main plot of Imzadi is Tom Riker is kidnapped, but they think they have Will Riker and they're trying to use him as a bargaining chip. Anyway, this episode itself, I liked. I did not find it derivative. Because it was so different from the Enemy Within. Enemy Within,
for sure,
they split him in half, and it was two different parts of the personality. Yeah. Whereas this is more of the road not taken, and I really liked the idea of him trying to pick up with Troy right where they left off. Because to him, I didn't realize the time frame that Imzadi apparently takes place just 2 years before the series begins. And Tom Riker was made just a few weeks after Imzadi, like 2 or 3 weeks, it sounded like.
Okay.
So to him, not that it was any fresher, because he still lived those other 8 years, but he was in crisis for those 8 years, and he never had the opportunity to blow off the relationship. So for him, it was very much alive. I mean, it's like coming home and finding your wife remarried. You know?
Right. It Castaway or whatever. Yeah.
Right. So there's that whole road not taken. And I really like what it does for Troy's character of offering her the road not taken.
The literal second chance.
Yeah. Now, I do think, and obviously Riker's the star of this, but I see like major implications for Troy's character. And I do think at the end, she does not choose Tom, not because there's anything wrong with Tom, and not because she's convinced he would choose his career over her, because I don't think at this point, I think she's sincere enough to believe he's gone through trauma. She's a counselor. She knows mental stuff. In my opinion, her and Will have evolved past what they were in the last 6 years. And so to try to take a Riker that did not experience the last 6 years with her would ignore that evolution of herself. Was my takeaway from that.
That's a very good take.
But I'm reading into stuff that's not on screen. They don't give the reasons why she chooses what she chooses. But that's getting to the end of the episode. We should probably jump back to the beginning and talk about it from the start. They talk about Starfleet was forced to evacuate the space 8 years ago, and it just so happened to be the USS Potemkin, where Lieutenant Will Riker was serving. While we're told that, then we then go into 10 Forward, which they had a very prominent shot, did you notice, of Ensign J, who's a background actress that's in every episode. A very prominent shot of her walking through 10 Forward.
Yeah.
I didn't notice her until this rewatch, but I figured this was like, oh, we're going to give her a little spotlight because she's been with us so many years. Yeah. Even though she never has any lines.
Yeah.
Then we get Riker playing trombone just to remind us that he's a trombone player. But I love the whole interaction with Troy and Crusher at the bar, just them by themselves, but then also Troy taunting Riker by choosing Nightbird that Will try to ignore her on because he can't get the solo right after all of these years. Which
didn't dawn on me until after I went to our buddies at Fashion It So on Tumblr, but I think that's a play on Nightbird, because the key part of not Nightbird, Freebird, is the solo, the long guitar solo, and the joke has always been that's the thing to call out at any concert is Freebird.
Oh.
In fact,
I mean, Nightbird is a real song.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
It is.
So maybe that's just me reading me into it. We finally get to those two and their outfits, and neither one is my favorite, but I'll tell you what, they work for me. They both end up working for me, and Fashion It So felt the same way. I think it was just the bare shoulders worked for me, and that. But it also reminded me of at this time, and this might just apply to me, but in Dayton at this time, like the thing was like there were a couple nights a week, there were places to go see jazz like this.
I did look up Nightbird while we were talking, and it looks like it was composed in 1987, if indeed they're using the real song. Okay. So that would have only been 6 years old at this point. They didn't go way back into the back, unless they just made up another song and called it Nightbird and it wasn't a real song. I'm not sure. Memory Alpha does not give details. Okay. So I don't know if that was the real song or not. But anyway. Yeah, so he's playing jazz, which is fun. I like that.
Why was Riker's outfit still with a Starfleet insignia? He was in a weird, like, silk shirt and everything. Yeah, but
that wasn't attached. That was a magnet. It's magnetic. So you can put it on whatever you're wearing.
Oh, that's what he was doing. Okay, that makes sense.
And while it is his off hours, he is first officer of the starship.
Do you think it's available online? Because I wouldn't mind getting that.
The badge? There are a million of them, but I don't know about magnetic ones.
I'd like a shirt with that badge. Yeah.
I'm sure if you looked hard enough, you could find the shirt. I know you can get badges, but most of them are not magnetic. Most of them you have to pin on, which isn't as nice. Yeah. They should make magnetic ones. They probably do. I haven't seen them. Yeah. The pins are cheaper, so those are more prevalent. I love just him getting saved. Saved right before he has to do the solo. The look of relief. Riker's such a fun character, and that was the rest of this episode is not very fun, so I was glad we got that fun Riker at the beginning. Mm-hmm. I will mention right now, because we were just talking about how Jonathan Frakes directs a lot, this episode was not directed by Jonathan Frakes. That would have been really difficult to direct doubles of yourself, but it was directed by LeVar Burton.
Yeah.
That's probably why Geordi was hardly in this.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So they are back at the station, and they mentioned that the transporters have gotten more efficient in the last 8 years. I would hope so. I'm glad they're still making evolution to the transporters. Yeah. So that's why they think they can beam whereas the Potemkin had issues with it. Mm-hmm. Left a huge mess down there. I did wonder, so they beam down, they meet I'm just going to call him Tom because that's what he settles on at the end of the episode.
Right.
That's what he's called in the next episode. We see him in all the books. I know he doesn't settle that till the end, but I mean, Zoe watched part of it with me, and she kept calling him Yellow Riker and Red Riker, which works. But I think it's just simpler to just call him Tom, even though he doesn't choose Tom.
Fashion So called it camel vomit uniform was the one that Tom was in. So. Yeah,
not fair. I liked the disheveled look and that he doesn't bother to comb his hair. But shouldn't he be pretty scrawny, especially when he mentions the replicators haven't worked in a long time?
Right. Yeah. Speaking of Castaway, he should be ripped. Yeah.
I'm not ripped necessarily, but malnourished.
Yeah.
Bony.
Yeah.
I think if you remade this episode today, you'd use CGI to show that, and you should. In this day, they didn't have the technology to change his body frame.
The Fashion So their distinction was that Will Riker let his belly out and Thomas Riker sucked it in, and that was the distinction to show you that. But
I didn't even notice.
Yeah, I didn't see it that much either.
Crusher will verify that it's him. At this point in the episode, obviously I knew who Tom Riker was, and I knew this was legit and on the up and up. But were you thinking it was some type of trick or some type of?
I didn't. I don't know if it's because we talked about it in some form or fashion, like about Boiler on Lower Decks. But so I otherwise I probably would have been like, okay, what's up here? But for some reason I did not in this instance. Yeah, maybe like I said, maybe because we talked about it, or maybe it made sense. I don't know. It made sense, maybe a stretch, but it worked for me. So yeah.
Yeah, I was just waiting for. I think I would have been just waiting for the other shoe to drop years ago when it aired.
Yeah,
and I was gratified that it wasn't. And this is the thing that sets it apart from The Enemy Within, is if you're waiting for the other shoe to drop, the fact that it never does, and this is authentically just a copy of Riker, is really interesting. It also gets into the technology. It's a shame Keith isn't here to debate it. Maybe we'll have that debate when we check in with him. But about how the transporter works. And how they had to boost the signal by making a duplicate, but then the duplicate bounced off the shield because they were right at the right frequencies. It's just very interesting. So that leads to the theory that you could make a duplicate of anybody using the transporter at any time if you wanted to, right?
Yeah.
So there's got to be some Star Trek story somewhere at some point, and I have not heard of it or seen it, where somebody purposely makes transporter clones of themselves. Beverly says he's authentic because the brain patterns can't be faked and there's only minor differences. I guess that's probably true, right? I would think.
I guess. She's the doctor.
Yeah. They keep transporter logs for 8 years because they said, let's consult the Potemkin's transporter logs and see what happened.
Oh, yeah.
And the fact that they have that data is a real boon for them figuring out the mystery. They keep the log. They not only keep the logs 8 years, but other starships have a copy of another ship's logs from 8 years ago. They don't have to write to the Starfleet archives to ask for them. It seemed a little bit of a stretch that they would have that data, but I guess I have trouble complaining though, because do you really need bureaucracy in this episode? Let's just streamline it and get to what we're getting to.
Yeah, we don't have to get into future disk storage space in the future.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure in the future, a computer drive the size of Data's hand can hold all the combined knowledge of Earth right now.
Right.
On a Galaxy-class starship, you probably have everything everybody's ever thought of. Everyone is being so nice to Thomas, so compassionate to Thomas Riker and the whole situation. But Will doesn't want him to talk to Deanna, who is the counselor, whose whole job it would be to talk to somebody in this situation. I mean, I think he knows. He realizes when this happened, and he knows what might happen between them.
I don't think I could compete with 15-year younger me. Well, maybe I could.
He wasn't younger, though.
Oh, you're right. It's just you're right.
But he didn't choose to reject Deanna the way Will did.
Yeah, under those circumstances, I might not be able to compete with 15-year younger me.
I mean, seeing somebody you love move on is hard enough. Seeing somebody you love move on with your exact duplicate, so you have the constant reminder of what could have been right in front of your face.
Yeah.
Especially because even though they're still both at this point comfortable with putting their careers first, you can tell that they're both still thinking about it.
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Like, it's going to take them a few more years, well into the films, before we explore that. But it just seems in this episode, I mean, Troy says, we're just friends. We decided not to. You know that there's chapters of their story that took place during the series that we didn't see, where they probably slept together one night and talked about what it meant and if they wanted to give it a go. And you know all that's there because the way they've always played these characters, that subtext, that's not a stretch to believe that all of that's happened.
Well, yeah, we've talked about they're more than friends, but maybe less than a couple. But that's a lot. There's a big area in between there. So, yeah.
Right. And so that's just, I see Will's hesitance. I will give him credit. It's jumping ahead, but I give him credit that he eventually takes the mature road and says, look, I have no ground to stand in your way because I made my choice. And if you want to pursue it, you can pursue it. I think Deanna's holding out for him, though. I think Deanna rejects Tom because she's holding out for Will.
He rejects him, shuts him down. Yeah, real hard. Yeah.
Not real hard because they have a little bit of fun first. I mean, that's true. With a hug and a kiss, which she rejects him initially, but then she instigates it later.
Yeah, she does say, whatever. Good evening, Mister.
She's tempted.
Tom, whatever. Yeah,
she's tempted, but it would be choosing to go back and ignore what happened. And again, I think she's not the type to ignore what happened. I think she likes where they've evolved.
Sure.
But I do think part of her is also holding out a candle for Will Riker.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's easy to say in retrospect. Maybe if the movies never did explore it and all we had was the series and them never getting together, I'd probably be more like, oh, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. But the fact that eventually they took the time to actually get into these characters and give them an ending certainly influences the way I see the story now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And sorry if I'm spoiling that, but...
Nah. I mean, I know more...
It's not the point of any of the films. It's just that.
Right.
Yeah.
The moment where Riker and Riker are face-to-face was super cheesy. Not only the moment, but also the actual effects were so cheesy. It looked like the old... Well, actually, I shouldn't say the old. I would say from this era, movie posters you would see all the time in the 80s and 90s. And it was just like, oh, okay. All right. Well, you haven't perfected the technology just yet, but...
You're right about the technology, but I would say they did a pretty decent job with what they had at the time. So this was a really challenging acting experience because you don't want to vary the characters very much because they are the same person.
Right.
Except one's been through trauma. I thought Frakes did a pretty darn good job of finding the right balance of making them the same person but having just slight differences.
I did too, and it didn't get into the hamminess it could have. And again, part of that's the character, as you said. It's the same character instead of some of the times Brent Spiner. Some of the times he's got to have fun, but again, different characters, a different set of
with
characters.
Lore and Dr. Sue and stuff.
So,
but you're right. Totally different situation.
Yeah, but I felt the same way. I thought Frakes just handled it just right.
So they go to the transporter room, and the transporter operator is none other than Mae Jemison. Lieutenant Palmer is the character's name. It's not a big part, but she's not an actress. She's best known for this because she only has one other credit as an actress.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's a movie called No Gravity in 2011, and there's really no information on IMDb about it, not even a plot summary, so I don't know if it says it's a TV movie, but I don't know if it's a documentary. And
she got to run off like 2 lines or something here too, right?
Yeah, she got a couple lines.
So I thought that was kind of a like, hey, so this is your time to shine.
So it looks like No Gravity. I was looking around Tomatoes. It's about a young space engineer with dreams of going to space, embarks on a bizarre journey connecting her to icons of women in space and cyborg culture. So it looks like Mae Jemison probably plays herself in that. But yeah, obviously she's not an actress. She's an astronaut, and she actually was the first African-American woman in space. That's NASA. Right. Yep. So and she was a Star Trek fan, so they made the spot for her. She didn't have enough to do to know if she's a decent actress or not, but I thought it was a pretty cool cameo, knowing who she is. Mm-hmm. The Rikers talk about their father, Kyle.
Yes.
And Will talks about the schism between them and that they've started to heal things, and Thomas has no interest in healing things because he hasn't had... When you're he was basically in trauma for the last 8 years. I kind of wish they'd done more with the trauma. because we're just kind of touching on it, but he acted relatively normal and balanced for somebody who had been abandoned by himself for 8 years. But, you could also argue that maybe he knew they couldn't get to him and rescue him, and that's just, he accepted it. He's had enough time to accept it. But yeah, talking about the dad and Thomas having no interest in making contact, I was like, that's missed opportunity. Yeah. I would really like to see Kyle Riker react. I kind of wish they'd made room for a scene of him later in the episode. Point.
Yep. I think it would have fit in this episode, the way it was really just about the relationships rather than some other thing going on, for the most part.
Tom immediately starts ignoring orders from Will. Yeah, that's a rough one. Like, it's an order from yourself. Do you listen? Do you not listen?
Right.
It depends your self-esteem and how much confidence you have in yourself.
Yeah, I mean, because it's the idea, because Will follows orders, right?
He does, but he's also... So Will Riker is supposed to be, at the beginning of the series, a Jim Kirk-type character.
Right.
Where he does break the rules and he does take chances, but he's learned to moderate himself serving under Picard. And part of why he keeps refusing promotions to captain is he feels he still has more to learn, and he greatly admires Picard and is actually... Not that he'll be the same type of captain Picard is, but he's realizing that it helps balance his personality to learn from somebody like that. So this Tom Riker, who hasn't had that experience, is more of that rule breaker, risk taker. Don't you? Starting to go into song lyrics there. Rule breaker. I know those aren't the lyrics. But still, in that situation, and again, this is where I thought they missed an opportunity to play that part of it into trauma, that he's resentful because this Will got to live the life he should have had.
Right.
But because they didn't explore that, it almost feels odd and out of character for him to be ignoring the orders. It almost feels forced.
Yeah, I agree. And
it could have just taken one line of Troy saying like, "Oh, are you jealous of him because this is the life you thought you should have?" Yeah, I don't know.
They call him Wrecker 2 on the transcript, but he does kind of the scavenger hunt for Troy.
Yeah.
And she reads each note. And I was like, couldn't they have had either like a voiceover reading it or just let us read it or both? It was just weird to have her read it out loud. I mean, that's a nitpick, but still.
I was fine with that. What bothered me about the scavenger hunt was she takes a note off the warp core, and Geordi's like, "What's going on?" And it's like nobody noticed the note being put there or it being sitting there for however long it's been sitting there.
The security and engineering is very dubious.
Well, we know the security engineering is lax, to say the least.
Especially,
but there's a lot of people on duty in engineering. I feel like somebody would have noticed. They noticed her coming in, but they didn't notice him coming in to leave it.
Right.
He is artistic. The picture he made with a phaser beam. Yeah. Man, I didn't know phasers could do that. That's pretty cool.
That's exactly what the Fashion SO people said. They're like, what exactly is in this artwork? Because it doesn't look like something you could do with a phaser. But yeah, I guess
I thought it because it was an etching.
Away.
Well, it was an etching, and you burn to make an etching. And he talked about how it took him a lot of trial and error to be able to make art with the phaser. Like, it wasn't a natural thing. And I think Riker's resourceful and intelligent enough to make those adjustments.
Yeah.
The whole conversation about Riker saying, I reached out with my mind, Tom Riker, I reached out with my mind to Troy being abandoned here. And she's like, and I reached out with my mind to you, and they didn't feel each other. That, to me, is kind of the plot hole in this episode, because maybe not this part of the series, but we certainly know the book Imzadi is not canon, but they can feel each other to a certain extent, Will and Deanna. Right. But maybe where she left him out right after Imzadi, they couldn't really do that yet over distances. I don't know. But I do think Troy got over him. She did the work and she got over him to a certain extent.
Yeah. And I enjoyed that conversation, actually, the conversation about him thinking about them on Ryza or whatever. And he said something, maybe not exactly about looking at the same star or underneath the same stars, which made me think of somewhere. There we go. Yeah, which is, I feel like was around this time. That might have been a little before it, but
that was the 80s, so that would have been out before.
Right.
That was the first movie I ever saw in movie theaters.
Oh, wow.
I was 3 years old. Yeah, it was 1986.
Okay, so much earlier. Yeah.
So they did not rip off Star Trek at that point. That Star Trek was ripping off an American Tale. Picard decides that it's worth the risk to get the data, which I accidentally capitalized in my notes for some reason, because they weren't saving data. Picard, so there's danger, right? Because the active activity on the planet to go underneath the station would be risky. Picard decides it's worth it to risk personnel. That doesn't feel like Picard to me. The only way I can square that is he does trust Will Riker so much, and Tom Riker is so confident he can do it, that I feel like Picard may be taking his confidence in Will Riker and putting it on this guy and trusting him at this point. Because he is the same guy. Yeah. So that's not unjustified. But yeah, it just felt a little out of character for Picard. We had the Tai Chi scene, and the Bechdel test was broken approximately half a second into it.
Yeah. Once Sasha So said, yeah, they're doing Tai Chi, so they have to be talking about guys. It's the only time they can really get together and dish on this kind of stuff.
Well, they weren't doing Tai Chi, right? They were doing the Klingon version that Worf taught them.
Yes.
But it was Tai Chi.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the Tai Chi thing. It tickled me that Beverly set this up for them.
Mm-hmm.
Like Beverly gave Troy that little push. Yeah. I mean, just like Troy being hesitant and Beverly encouraging her, I think is a testament to how well Crusher knows her at this point, and knows that she does still like Riker. And that's when she kisses him.
Yeah, and I wrote, this is some Tai Chi I can get into. I didn't realize that was part of the curriculum.
I took Tai Chi in college, and nothing like that ever happened in my class, so I feel cheated. Will recognizes in Troy's look that what's going on when he tells her he doesn't need permission. Again, I just really appreciate being reminded of the shorthand between them and the connection between them. That was a really good thing. And I liked Will's warning her. It did not come across to me as trying to sabotage them. It came across to me as genuine concern because he knows himself. Right?
Yeah.
And he also knows what the work he's done to change himself that this guy hasn't done.
That's true. That's right. And that guy's been on a planet for a year, so he's in a different place. Yeah.
Love the poker scene. Yeah. Loved Will inviting Tom to sit down. Loved how uncomfortable it was. Loved all the subtext and Data just not giving an F. Worf just had to show in subtle looks like, oh crap, I'm stuck here. I'd love to leave, but I don't have a choice. I did really, really appreciate, and I know this had to be an acting choice by Brett Spiner. He looks at his cards and puts them down, and then he's doing the everybody, how many cards do you want? And he gets to himself, and he doesn't look at the cards again. He just puts the two he wants out and deals them. And I'm like, an android would not need to check again. A person would to make sure they're discarding the right two. But he knows exactly which two. I love that.
That is a good touch.
Tiny, tiny detail, but I hadn't seen this episode before, so I was able to appreciate a few other things.
Gotcha.
Tom thinks Will plays it safe, which is kind of what we were talking about, what Will's learned from Picard. Right. Whereas, obviously, Will thinks Tom's too reckless because he thinks that of himself. I will say, personally, and I think a lot of people are like this, we're our own harshest critic, right? I think things and say things and judge myself for things that I don't judge anybody else for. Right. And I think when faced with your duplicate, he's going to extend his judgment on himself on the duplicate. And I think that's why Will's so harsh on Tom. And Tom's so harsh on Will. I think it's part of why they clash. And Tom's line about, well, you always had the better hand. Because Will's being so smug about, oh, I can tell when you're bluffing. I know your tell. And then it turns out he is bluffing, even though Tom's insisting that you don't know me. Yeah. I thought Tom was going to win the hand. I thought it was one of those moments where you're going to be like, no, Will's being smug and whatever. But no, that was so much better. That was so cool. That he's like, no, yeah, you're right. I can't get that up on you, but you always worked out the better hand. Tom decides to take a ship, another assignment on their ship because he and Will can't work together, which makes absolute sense. I get it. Absolutely. If I were Will, the commander, you'd make it work, right? But if you're the lieutenant, you're not going to, with the power imbalance, the person with the lesser power just can't make that work. Yeah. It makes sense. But he asked Deanna to follow him as a family member. He says after a few months, we can bring family on board. That rubbed me the wrong way badly. And I think it's that younger version of him who hasn't yet put his career above her, but this could also be part of her decision. Is in this moment he is putting her career above her because he's not saying, I talked to the captain and they could use a counselor. He's saying, you can come on as my family member and not an official Starfleet crew member.
Yeah.
He wants to be with her, but it's still that element of putting the career first, which is a really nice, subtle line.
Yeah. And making her feel second class. Yeah.
I don't think he's trying to do that. I really think, in his opinion, he's making the decision Will didn't make with the promotion.
At least he's committing.
Right. And I do think Deanna sees that too. I don't think Deanna's just saying, he's choosing career.
Right.
It's over. But in a way he is, because he's not asking her to transfer and he'll go with her, which really should be the conversation, versus I'm just going to do what I have to do and you come join me as a passenger. I don't think she'd be happy as a passenger.
No.
Data asks Worf about how you would deal with a double. And Worf's response is, I wouldn't get along because I'm not easy to get along with. Points for self-awareness. But I also feel like missed opportunity that Data doesn't even bring up lore.
Yeah, you would think he would.
I mean, you could make the argument that lore is not a duplicate of him. He is in his own personality.
Sure.
But still, the uniqueness, and then just that mention of something you don't like about yourself. Yeah, really harsh on yourself. Yeah. That was good. Tom is being super snarky when they beam down and he and Will go underground and get into the core. That moment where Tom falls and Will saves his life. Again, totally in character for Will that he's not going to let this guy die, even though it would be so much easier for him if he did.
Right.
Did any part of you think Star Trek the writer of this episode was tempted, was probably told we'd let her? I would think Star Trek would kill him, right? So
that's what I thought was going to happen. I thought it was going to make it clean, and so I did. Passionate So thought it was super cheesy and predictable that the bridge would collapse, of course. But I thought the same thing. Like, oh, good, we can get rid of him real easy here, and he's gone, and we move on. I mean, they still find a quote unquote easy way to get rid of him, but yeah. I mean,
but I think it's a realistic way to get rid of him.
Oh, sure.
It makes more sense for him to transfer than for him to stay. It's not forced. I'm really glad they made the decision to leave him out there. I wish more was done with it other than one Deep Space Nine episode, but and lots of novels, like I said, but only one other hour in canon deals with Tom Riker. But he may get mentioned again other times. I'm not sure. I don't remember. But yeah, I'm glad they made the choice to leave him out there. It would have kind of sucked. Episode was story by Michael A. Medlock, who's best known for this. Writing episodes of Swamp Thing, Sologram 2050, 2500. He only has 10 credits. He did write I guess this was 20 years ago. It's not recently, for the television series Buzz Lightyear Star Command. That was 2000.
Oh, wow.
Crazy. That was that long ago. But he wrote this after doing a couple of cartoon episodes, and pretty much all his credits are cartoon. Hercules, the series, Where on Earth is Carmen Sandiego, the animated the Super Mario Brothers Super Show. But this is his only Star Trek writing credit. And then it was teleplay by Renee Echevarria, one of the people on staff.
Yeah, interesting.
I would not be surprised if Michael killed off Thomas and Renee chose to save him because of a writer. Because that has to be a writer-driven discussion. That can't be a decision the individual writer gets to make on their own, I would think. But Troy chooses herself over Tom. Right decision.
Yeah, for sure.
If Marina Sirtis wanted to leave the show, you could adjust this to make it make sense that she goes with him. Sure. And in a way, that would give the fans a happy ending of her ending up with a Riker, or if this were the final season and we were just a couple episodes from the end. But again, I think I like stuff that we haven't seen with Troy better than anything I like that we have seen with Troy. I think her best moments are still ahead of us. Yeah. There's some really good moments for her in a couple of the films. So I'm glad she stuck around. Yeah. They let her play the humor, especially in Star Trek First Contact, which is the best.
Good.
And they let her play the humor, which she is good at it. They hardly ever let her do it, but they let her do it opposite James Cromwell. So we got that to look forward to. Will gives Tom his trombone. He mentions that I've got a whole quarters full of things that belong to both of us. And that's got to be rough for Tom too. I know Riker doesn't seem like a materialistic person.
Right.
But to know that all your stuff is gone and you can't get it back because it belongs to you, essentially.
Right.
I feel like he should have given him more than the trombone. But I'm glad he gave him... I assume that trombone's meaningful, and I'm glad he gave him something meaningful.
That's something
that would be... It is a sacrifice to part with it, I'm sure. That's
what Fashion and So said. They're like, this can be... A better version of this can be just replicated, but there is something in that it's... Yeah, the sentimental...
That's if this were Lower Decks, the tag at the end would be Will, like, nah, I just gave him a replicated.
Right.
But I think we can assume because Will Riker is the noble, moral man, I think we can assume he gave him the real one. He may have made himself a replicated copy after. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I do think and we didn't need to see this as a scene, but he should have let Tom come into his quarters and they should have divided the stuff roughly in half, like you would like a brother that you're... or an ex that you're splitting up with.
Yes. Yeah.
They talk about the name Thomas and how Will never cared for it, but the duplicate likes it. I have to wonder, and this does not need to be in the episode. I would love a short story that explains what changed his mind during his tenure that he came around to that name.
Yeah.
It had to be. It might have just been thoughts. It might not have been an event, but I would really like to know.
I had the same feeling. Like there had to be something that
Yeah, I don't think any novel tackles.
That's why you're Jimmy-Jerome and our moves. That's exactly things like that.
I'm only Jimmy-Jerome on this podcast, and no other place in my life does anyone call me Jimmy-Jerome.
And that
is my. It's all been tricked before name. My real name is Sir Hubert Humpledick. No, just Radican Fivel Esquire the Third.
There you go.
No, but it is odd that I have a different name for this podcast than the rest of my life.
Yeah, it just happened.
It did. I think, that might have been Amanda's doing, like back in season 1.
First, it's really, very early. Yeah.
Tom kisses Troy goodbye in front of Will. That's a little bit of a dig, right?
Yeah.
A little bit.
But, he's got to, what else is he going to do?
I mean, Will gets to stay with her, so he's got to do something. That's his FU on the way out.
Uh-huh.
But then, I don't know, I'm sure you noticed this. After he leaves, Will and Deanna hold hands.
Yeah, and I wrote that was very sweet. I just thought that was just another one of those little moments, and they don't, like, it wasn't a close-up on the hands. It was just like the faraway shot, and you just see it, and it was just very sweet. And for me, that encapsulates kind of the whole episode. But and their relationship, and our feeling that it is very special, regardless of all these other things that come through and happen with it. That those feelings are there, and however you want to characterize it, or whatever label you want to put on it, it's there, and it's very sweet. It's very endearing. Yeah.
I will say I've seen very little of the final season, but I know I've made reference to you that Deanna becomes involved with Worf. That's why he's on the cover of Imzadi too. Yeah. That makes me even sadder that they go there with the two of them, because there's all this groundwork laid. I mean, I know they knew in the 7th season that was their ending of the series. Like, they knew that was it. Right. So why didn't they go there with Deanna and Will?
Is which is worse, that or Joey and not Monica,
Joey and Rachel?
Joey and Rachel.
Joey and Rachel's way worse. Okay. But I haven't watched the Deanna Worf relationship, so maybe I'll feel differently.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess we'll see. Yeah.
Like I said, I've seen very little of the final season in real life. Not even the finale. I've never seen the series finale. I've read the novelization like 8 times. It's a great story, but one mention I read somebody else when I was looking up stuff about this episode. Will Riker mentions he got the promotion to lieutenant commander because of the rescue that resulted in making Tom, right?
Yeah.
So why is Tom still a lieutenant? Why doesn't he get the promotion? Because he still did the heroic act that earned the promotion.
Right, that's a good question.
He should have been lieutenant commander this whole episode.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Well, even if that's a tag on the episode, like, hey, Starfleet Command brought this in for you or something. Right. I don't know.
Like also, the episode was, I alluded to this earlier, the enemy within 2, whether they split them or whatever. I still felt like they should have given some kind of shout out, but I guess your point's well made that it's not the enemy within because that was a splitting, whereas we've seen these people caught in transit. I mean, even Strange New Worlds has that, the daughter caught in transit kind of thing. And, of course,
Scotty.
Scotty, so.
But those were all different circumstances than this, because he wasn't caught in the transporter.
Right.
He was duplicated by it.
Yeah.
I will. My alternate episode was that Tom stayed on the ship. I would have liked to have actually seen that develop more. Mm-hmm. I don't think he could have stayed long term, but a few episodes would have been nice.
And whether he'd stayed on the same track as Will or become a different version of him, or more different version, I should say. Yeah.
How different would this show be if Tom stayed and Will finally accepted the promotion to captain? And then the writers get to basically start over with Will Riker, which would be a really interesting story.
Yeah.
I feel like if you did this show now and you waited till the show was this well established and maybe the actor Jonathan Frakes was restless, this would have been a really cool way to do something to give him more interesting meat to play with.
Yeah. Yeah.
The fans would be really upset to see Will leave and having that reset, but that would have been so cool. That's my I mean, the other alternate episode, of course, is Tom falls and dies, but who wants to? I don't want to see that. I like this so much better. Yeah. So much better. I mean, you can make the argument if you do, like, he really goes there with Deanna, that him dying really has an impact on Will and Deanna, but that's not the way they were going with it.
Yeah.
Oh, I did have one other fashion note. I noticed the difference they did choose between the colors of uniform is Riker's hair was in the middle, all back, and Tom Riker had the part.
Right.
So that's how they had different hair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which would have been great if we had a scene where Tom Riker pretended to be Will and we just knew by the hair it was him taking it.
Right.
Or maybe Will Riker just wanted to get some from Deanna, so he did the Tom hair and went in the corners.
Oh, yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. That's wrong. That's so
a Brady
wrong.
Bunch episode thing.
Let's get to the rankings. Who was your annoyance?
Troy, just for Nightbird. Just for calling out Nightbird.
Oh, that's not annoying. That was endearing. I have a really hard time coming up with an annoyance for this episode because I really didn't feel like people were being annoying.
Yeah.
But I am going to go with, just for lack of better option, I'm going to go with Crusher for setting up Deanna and Tom Riker because, that's more of a conversation than let's just spring this on you. That's not really cool.
That's fair.
Who you having a drink with?
Tom Riker. Yeah.
I mean, I'm going with Frakes.
Who?
The actor.
Yeah.
Jonathan Frakes.
That's a good culture. Yeah.
That's a discussion I want to have. I don't want to choose between Will and Tom. I want to talk to the guy that was tasked with choosing that.
Absolutely.
Ranking the episode. Oof. This one's hard to figure out where to start.
Yeah.
I'm going to start in the middle. Let's go with the most recent episode, Rightful Heir. Better or worse?
That feels like a good starting spot.
Yeah. I think this edges it out, in my opinion.
I was going to go below. Do we make Keith decide?
Sure. Let's see if we would stay there, though. I mean, I don't think I'd go higher, though. Quality of life is above it. That's the exocomps.
I
think Rightful Heir is a good place to go slightly above. If you went below Rightful Heir is Frame of Mind.
Oh, yeah. I think I'd have this above. So I think.
Okay. See, I was just going to say I'm not sure. I might go below Frame of Mind.
This is what happened.
Let's say but I would definitely go above Face the Enemy, which is below Frame of Mind, where Troy.
So it's up to Keith whether it goes above or below. Yeah.
So we'll give Keith that little bit of wiggle room where he can go anywhere above or below Rightful Heir or Frame of Mind. I feel like we're pretty much in agreement that's around the right area, right in the middle of the season.
Yeah.
Actually, it's slightly above the middle of the season.
Okay.
So just slightly, like an episode or two above. So that should work out really nicely. Next week, Deep Space Nine, The Forsaken. And we're actually going to be Deep Space Nine for the next 3 weeks. Put Next Gen pin in it. We got 2 episodes left in the season, but we got 3 DS9s first. DS9 is 4 left in the season, but for some reason they burned off 3 in between. Next Gen comes back for 2, and then we'll finish DS9.
So Keith's got some time to get caught up.
Right.
Give us your thoughts on the episode you missed.
I enjoyed that a lot more than I thought I would, based upon that premise. I must have seen it before. They explored a few things that I would have. I mean, these are the kinds of things we would think about. Lots of great character development. It's like a follow-up to the Imzadi novel storyline, which was
not just a follow-up. It takes place mere weeks after Imzadi, which seemed really like wow.
Well, in a way, right? I mean.
Oh, sorry. He was marooned mere weeks after Imzadi. So for him, those events are still a lot not that they're fresher, but that they are more prevalent in his mind because he's focused on them so much. And of course they happened before they broke up. So
Right, so they got to explore a lot of things like the whole path not taken idea, and nature versus nurture, or just really just the way that small. I mean, it's hard to call it a small event, but just some other decision could have completely changed things or someone's outlook. So that's pretty much it.
You may be interested to know, Keith, that the writers very much considered killing off Will Riker in this episode and using Thomas from here forward.
I think it would have been a good way to freshen up his character, for the sense of I mean, they covered it actually in this episode, the idea of him turning down the command, and there's only so much you could do with that for a while, for it to seem realistic, for him to just say, oh yeah, I'm not really that ambitious anymore. This is more important to me, hanging out with friends and so forth. And so, whatever justifications we come up with him, or come up for him, I'm saying, but
ranking that episode, we only were apart by one episode. We just very slightly disagreed. Would you put it above or below Rightful Heir?
I liked it better.
Interesting. We both had it below the Rightful Heir.
It's so tough. I mean,
but we disagreed whether it should go one below or two below. So maybe it goes one below if Keith thinks it actually belongs above Rightful Heir. Above, that's the quality of life.
I'd go above that. It's tough because
you'd go above quality of life.
Yeah, it's not like it feels like there's more going on in the other two episodes, but I like the character studies in this.
Okay, what about
the concepts being explored? And, I don't know.
Above that's Birthright Part 1.
See, I might put it below that. Okay, it's tough.
So we disagreed whether it goes below Rightful Heir or right below that's Frame of Mind. But because you think it should go above Rightful Heir, we're going to put it right below Rightful Heir, because that's, I think, the fairest middle ground, the compromise position.
That sounds like an episode title.
Compromise position?
Yeah.
Yep. In The Forsaken, Loxana Troy comes for a political visit and instead hounds Odo for romantic attention. Meanwhile, an alien probe wreaks havoc with the station's computer, leaving Odo and Loxana trapped together. So Loxana heads to DS9. Until then, live long.
2 times, and prosper.
Don't live 2 times. That just gets confusing. That's annoying.
I wanted to work in You Only Live Twice from Bond, but I couldn't find a way to do it.
That would have been a good reference.
Yeah, but...
And prosper.
Yeah, and prosper.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?